Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 26th episode of Stories of Service, Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. And I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And today, as I always do, I have another amazing guest. And she's not only an amazing guest, she's one of my best friends. Her name is Sandy Duchac, and she is going to share a very, very important story and a message about her work regarding sexual assault, PTSD, equine therapy, and so much more. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a description about her work, and then we're going to get right into the questions. And thank you all for joining us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, wherever you're joining us. Sandy Duchac just recently was one of the 4 finalists for the 2021 San Diego County Veterans of the Year Award. It's for her work with the peer-to-peer military sexual assault support group and nonprofit Veteran Sisters. Not only that, she helps care for a herd of horses at Pegasus Rising Project and assists in the foundation of Equine Assisted Therapy for current and former military with PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and military sexual trauma. In the last year, she has assisted more than 100 men and women with PTSD, TBI, and MST finding healing through a herd of Polish Arabian horses. In her role as vice president for Veteran Sisters, she was able to combine her unique background in television journalism and years spent as a television producer for Paramount Studios, along with her active duty naval service, which makes her a fierce and dedicated advocate for the unique needs of veterans and a spokesperson for the nonprofit organization. Even in the last year, through her advocacy, the San Diego probation made a small procedure change that improved accountability, thereby reducing instances of veterans being needlessly triggered. And we'll be talking about that. Through her servant leadership, she has helped to bring a wider awareness of MST and effect meaningful changes. And by engaging with lawmakers to ensure service members who commit sexual violence and sexual assault are held accountable consistently. She is also did another change recently with a homeless transitional housing program in Oceanside, California, where they now require night checks to be conducted when by 2 staff members, which improves the security for both the residents and the staff by increasing transparency and accountability. She has personally assisted many veterans and active duty service members report their assaults to authorities, going to medical appointments and court hearings, even at the expense of the triggering her own PTSD. Each person she has helped has reported that their support was instrumental in their ability and willingness to report their abuse, advocate for themselves, and seek justice. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you.
So you have so much in here, and we're just going to get to it all. But the first thing that I want to ask you is, what inspired you to join the Navy in the first place?
Well, the Air Force recruiter was never in their office, so I ended up in the Navy. My dad is a retired gunny sergeant from the Marine Corps. My sister was already active duty in the Army, so I knew I wasn't tough enough to be a Marine, and I did not want to be in a service where my sister could give me push-ups. So I chose the Navy, and although I had my college degree, I decided to go in enlisted so that I could be a photographer and a journalist for the Navy.
Awesome. Awesome. So you were able to take some of the stuff that you did in your civilian background, bring that over to the Navy. And how many years were you in the military?
So I served on active duty for 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I got out in 2012, and
Okay.
I went directly into government contracting.
Right. Right. And you were with government contracting for a few years. And I think what we want to do around this time is start with what happened as you were processing out of the Navy and you were going through the Veterans Affairs process.
So in 2016, I went in for a compensation and benefits appointment, which is where the VA has a doctor who examines you to see if your disability claims warrant compensation. Um, I went. I went to my appointment. I had been to a few of these appointments, so this was probably my 4th or 5th appointment like this. They send it to you for every little thing. They send you to one for every little thing. I
Mm-hmm.
went in to my appointment, and the doctor who was contracted by the VA sexually assaulted me in the middle of my appointment. And when I tried to report it first to the VA, they actually called the doctor and gave him my name and told him that I had a problem with my exam. So they gave my attacker my name. He had access to my medical record, which had my home address. He knew that I was single and living alone, and he knew that I reported him.
Wow. So you report this and you think, okay, the Veterans Affairs people, they're going to do an investigation. At least that's what I would have thought. And it's going to take a little while. You knew that this probably was going to be a process that'd be drawn out. But what happened after that? What did you hear back from the VA?
So I wasn't really sure how to report it. So it was a VA doctor, but it took place in town.
Right. It was
We were at
contracted.
it was a QTC facility. They are the largest government contractor in the world. They're owned by the largest government contractor in the world, rather, and they do millions of these appointments. And I called the VA. I actually called a patient advocate first because I didn't know how to report it. It was the patient advocate's office that called the doctor and told him that I had a problem with him, and they gave him all my contact information. Um, and then I was told that I, if I wanted to make a report, I would have to come down to the La Jolla VA and go into the police station and report it there. So I attempted to do that, and I was told, oh no, we can't take a report. You're going to have to go to the police in the city it happened in, which was Oceanside. So I went to the Oceanside police and I made a report. And when the detective contacted me, so so I reported it it happened on a Thursday, I believe, and I reported it on a Monday
Hmm.
to the police. And it took about 30 days before a detective contacted me. And he attempted to get records from the VA, and the VA told him, stand down. This is now a federal matter. It wasn't actually a police agency that took over the investigation. It was the Veterans Affairs Office of the Inspector General. About a year later, I couldn't get I couldn't get any answers.
Right. So this was going on for months where you were just waiting to hear back from the VA Inspector General. I want to backtrack and find out also, how did you know that they gave your records over to the doctor?
They called and left me a voicemail and
The
told
doctor's office did?
no, the VA.
And they said, "Oh, we let the doctor know that you put in a complaint."
Yes.
Wow.
So the detective was actually very upset because um, it inhibited their ability to investigate. There was no longer any uh, way that they could use me. So one of the things that they like to do is have the victim call and say, "How could you do that to me?" To try and get them to confess over the phone with a detective listening in. But that was out of the question.
Mhm.
Um, a year had gone by and nothing had happened yet. He was still working with patients.
Mhm.
He hadn't been arrested. I was getting the runaround every time I called. So my work mom was our paralegal at our command. You actually know her, Joan. And she recommended that I make a complaint against his license with the state medical board. And so I did. And it took about 30 days after I put in the complaint and I heard from an investigator. And I went in and I gave a statement, and it was really the state or the California State Medical Board that
Right.
led the investigation and the charge. The investigator was amazing. He managed to work with several different agencies, including the VA, the Oceanside Police, um, and the medical board, as well as the state attorney general's office, to investigate this predator. And after 2 years, he was finally arrested and
Right.
charged.
And during that 2 years from when you made the complaint to when he was arrested and charged, did he continue to see patients?
He did.
Were
He
there
was he was let go at some point from QTC, and he went, and according to his online resume, um, he was working with hospice patients and doing wound care in a facility. So he had unfettered access to even more vulnerable patients
right.
for the 2 years that he was being investigated.
And he was abusing women and men
That's
from
right.
from what you've told me. And another thing to keep in mind is that even once he was charged, what was the outcome that the lawyers told you would be the best possible outcome that you could expect from this incident? Because it wasn't only you who came forward, there were other victims as well, correct?
Correct, which is really another bone of contention for myself and the other victims, and that is the VA would not allow investigators to um, look for victims themselves. So the VA sent out a single snail mail survey, and they sent out 300. It should have been closer to 2,000 that they sent out. And the people that they sent it to, about 50 responded in the affirmative, and they pressed charges against him for 6 veterans. And he was sentenced for 5.
Sentenced only under the 5 victims. And when you got to the point where it was the day of the sentencing, this was never a national story, correct? This stayed local.
That's correct.
And what was his sentence?
He was put on 3 years probation and ordered to register as a sitter, and he lost his medical license in the state of California. Um,
Right.
we found out that he's actually a secret sex offender, although he was ordered to register because of a new law that went into effect, AB 1950. He does not have to be publicly listed as a sex offender. The only people who can tell that he is a sex offender is law enforcement if they look it up.
Right. And why are there secret sex offender lists? Do you know?
I don't. I have spent the last 2 years working probation laws, trying to understand how the judge ordered him to be a sex
Mhm.
offender. The victims were all promised that if we gave our consent to the plea bargain, although he would not do jail time, he would be a publicly listed dot on a map sex offender.
Right.
And in the end, it didn't happen. Um, it's really frustrating when the people who are on that publicly facing sex offender list, someone who's been on it since they were 19 years old because they had sexual relations with their 16-year-old girlfriend, and now they've been married for 25 years, and that person is still a sex offender, but someone who is a genuine predator and a genuine threat to society gets to be a secret sex offender. And it's
It's shocking.
it
It's
is
absolutely shocking, and it's
it's
shameful. It's
it's
very
very
shameful,
painful.
and people need to know about these things, and I know that most of my podcasts are very happy and joy, 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 but sometimes we have to go there we've got some great comments here. We got Sheila Wyatt who says, "That's my sister. You're doing awesome, Sandy."
It's
And
one
we
of our
have
members.
a LinkedIn user. That means I'm just not friends with him. Who said, "I just got chills from what you said." And then we do have a question from Adam. And when we start talking about domestic abuse, we will get to your question, which is if they're perpetrated by a narcissist or a psychopath. We'll get to that. But for now, I kind of want to stick with the story. And I really want to know, once you found out about this list. Now, you said that the AB law was towards the secret sex offender list, but I also thought it had something to do with the length of probation.
Correct. So sorry, I'm trying really hard not to drop
I
some F-bombs.
No, I understand. I understand.
Um, so I learned a couple weeks ago that on the 23rd of January, my assailant will be free. He will no longer be on any type of probation. He was supposed to be on probation for 3 years, but AB 1950 actually reduced his probation time as a felony. He was convicted of a felony, and his probation was reduced by a year because of this law.
So
And
now so now instead of 3 years, it's just a 2-year probation, correct?
correct.
Mm.
And because of COVID, somehow he hoodwinked probation and was able to, while on probation, get a master's degree in hospital administration, which puts him back with patients. So, although he's lost his license in California, it's he can go to another state or another country and get his medical license again and practice medicine. And if that is difficult for him, he also has a master's degree that now allows him to do hospital administration, which puts him in proximity with patients, which should not happen. This
Yeah.
man is a predator, and on the 23rd of January, he will find a way to hurt more people.
He will. He will. And it's worth noting too that he has dual citizenship in Guatemala. And
That's
I believe you had told me before that he has practiced medicine there before, or
that's where
might.
he obtained his medical degree.
Okay, so he's free to go back there as well and practice. And it is very sad, and like a couple people said, this is why people don't report, because once you do report, this is the road, unfortunately, sometimes that you go down. But we're going to get to what you've been able to do with this, and try to turn this around and show how this made you into the advocate that you are today. And my friend Rosie says, "Thank you for sharing. It's brave, scary, and insightful, and I'm so sorry this happened to you." And I think just by you sharing this story today, and the outcome, and what has happened since, what we're doing is we're allowing these stories not to be in the shadows anymore, and not to be just one person's secret, because
Right.
I guarantee you that there were other people who this doctor abused, besides the people who got the one snail mail letter and happened to come forward, or might have seen the bleep in the local news report about this, because this never made national headlines, even though he was abusing
That's
veterans.
correct.
And I thank you so much for having the bravery to share this story. Is there any details of the story that you want to put out there that that I didn't ask you about?
I think the most important thing for everyone watching to remember is that this isn't this isn't a cheerful topic. MST, military sexual trauma, is has been a dirty little secret, and until we bring it into the light of day and talk about it, it's not going to go away. And this man is a predator. he preyed on vulnerable people, men and women. Although all of the victims that testified after he was sentenced, a male victim did come forward, and he was told that the case was over, and so they weren't going to continue to prosecute him. I still have high hopes that if enough people come forward, that he will be prosecuted again, and it could stop him from being allowed to leave the state of California and tie his hands so that he can't hurt other people.
I hope so too. And I have linked in my LinkedIn and in my Facebook, I have a link to the article. I'll make sure that on YouTube as well, for those of you who are watching it on YouTube, I've got a link to the article so that you know the name of this doctor. I mean, he's been publicly outed. And if anybody else has had a story like this who was seen at that Oceanside clinic,
He was
hope
actually seen at all of the
that's right. That's
QT
right. You told me
clinics
that.
in San Diego. So he was seen in San Diego, Chula Vista, El Cajon, Oceanside, and Temecula.
Right. Diane Porter says that she is so proud of you. And a LinkedIn user says the military ignores police reports made by military victims of MST. They're still in file at the SVU.
That's
So
correct.
that's what we're going to get into now is we're going to talk about your work with Veteran Sisters. So you are now the vice president of Veteran Sisters. And can you give me some of the what made you decide to join it? I know you joined it after this happened. And how did that all come about?
So his first known victim, Paula Kemp, our founder and president, um, made a report about this person 2 years before I was assaulted. And the VA and QTC ignored her report. And she was so traumatized by what happened to her, she created this organization so that other people, other veterans, could feel safe going to these compensation and benefits appointments. So what she would do is she would go with you. She would sit in there and watch the doctor like a hawk and be your standby, because they wouldn't provide a standby even though it's required by law. And Paula and I met at the arraignment, and we were told that we shouldn't speak to each other until the trial was over, because the district attorney didn't want any sense of impropriety. And because we did not want to harm that criminal case, we had almost no contact. If we saw each other at a hearing, we'd hold hands and say, we're going to get through this together. About 2 hours after he was sentenced, maybe 20 minutes, could have been 2 minutes actually, Paula turned to me and said, I want you to help me lead my organization. And she was literally the only person I couldn't say no to. She was the only person who knew exactly what I had been through.
Right.
And I also knew how difficult it was for me to go through that process alone. Although I had a good support network, I didn't take anyone with me to questionings or hearings. I felt I had to do it alone. And it's a very difficult thing to do alone. So when she asked me, I didn't feel like I could say no, and so I joined the organization, and then was nominated to be the vice president after like 2 or 3 months, and then I just dove right in.
I'm so proud of you.
We get calls all the time. I it's not an easy thing to do
No.
as as a victim or an advocate. As a victim, I was really lucky because the investigators and the district attorneys working on my case were really kind to me, and
They were. I remember I sat through that. I think I went to the sentencing,
yeah,
and, I remember they were very good to you guys.
and there's they I was treated pretty decently as a victim. As a victim's advocate, I'm treated like garbage. I'm often treated or told I'm a man hater by law enforcement. Um, I got a couple of death threats. I once broke all the rules and actually served a restraining order on an assailant who's still currently active duty, and I got yelled at. um,
Right.
and but it's it's hard. It is.
You're fighting the system, you know? We have another comment here, and this is so true. It says from Krista uh, Vietera. Thank you, Sandy, for sharing your trauma with us. Knowledge is power. If we don't talk about these incidents, nothing will change. Thank you for your service, your bravery for coming forward and pushing this case through the system, and for being a pioneer to try to get this predator locked up. And then Daniel Harriger says, "You are a rock. So proud of you, girl." So
So my my healing journey is still ongoing, but I feel like I've come through the hardest part, and I've learned how to cope. And part of that coping is allowing myself to be triggered to help others. It's You walk into a courtroom, you have no power, whether you're the victim or the defendant. And it's a scary feeling. It's a scary feeling to walk into a police station with someone who's just been raped and fight hundreds of years of stereotypes to get someone heard. It is enraging when the first question a victim is asked is, "Were you drinking? What were you wearing?" Fuck you. It doesn't, ah, damn it.
no, it's all good. It's all good. I actually looked up before this podcast if you get censored for cussing on LinkedIn and you don't. So it's all good.
um, but seriously, fuck
I
you.
know.
What I was wearing doesn't matter. I think the biggest thing that we need to do as a society is we need action deterring consistent punishment. If you look at some of the news stories, you've got that college student who was found guilty of raping an unconscious co-ed, and the judge didn't want to sentence him. He didn't want to find him guilty because he didn't want to ruin the guy's life. Well,
Right.
guess what? Her life is ruined.
Yep.
It is a struggle to crawl back to who you used to be. You're never going to be who you used to
No.
be. You you don't trust anymore. And when that trust is broken by a physician who took an oath to do no harm and is there to care for people who sign their name on a blank check to serve our nation, fuck you too, dude.
Yeah. I think that's the part that frustrated me the most about your story was hearing the way that the VA stalled the cases and let this play out for so many years before they took action. And then even once action was taken, the the small amount, I mean, probation for 2 years and then the ability to continue to practice medicine, it just infuriated me. And it changed my perspective about this issue by hearing your story. If I didn't know you and we weren't as close as we are, and I didn't also have another best friend who's going through a sexual assault case,
Who
or
we're
has gone
helping.
through one. Yes. Yes, who I'm connecting my friends who've been through these things. I honestly, don't know because I haven't been impacted by it personally from the assault side in the Navy, and so I just didn't understand that there was such a lack of justice and punishment. And I know that there is a new bill on the table that is, I think, going to be passed this year, which will No, it doesn't give all, I think, the protections that everyone wanted with taking things out of the hands of commanding officers in terms of sexual assault and rape. But I do think, and I think it's harassment as well. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that what I'm getting driving towards is that it's a step in the right direction, and so I don't want to let any baby step be unheard and unnoticed. There's a lot of people who have been impacted by this, and unfortunately, it took the incident at Fort Hood with Vanessa Gillian for people to understand that this has been going on for as long as it has, and then for the
It's been
military to
going on since as long as there's been a military.
right,
And
absolutely,
I in October, I was at an event with the secretary of the VA, and I told him, "Too little, too late, not enough, we need more," and that this bill, although it is a good step in the right direction, means nothing without consequences. These predators receive no consequences.
right.
They a good example is a naval officer was assaulted by another naval officer, and she was a lieutenant and he was a captain. And his punishment for being found guilty of sexual assault was to retire with full benefits. Where is the impetus to stop?
Where's the accountability? It seems like I've been
There's a
talking about accountability in the military a lot lately, and it's
because
just
there isn't
interesting.
any. It is it is a bureaucracy like any other. And not only that, it is a closed society. And when you serve alongside with someone, you expect them to treat you like a fellow service member, not their personal toy. And there's an active duty Navy chief on recruiting duty here in San Diego who broke into a veteran's home and tried to rape her. He confessed on text message the next day. San Diego PD declined to prosecute. And when we read the detective's report, it was 14 pages long and 11 pages was victim blaming. We went to the Navy and begged them to investigate because through our own network, through Veteran Sisters, we found that he had other victims, including a rape in Spain and a DUI here in San Diego, and nothing was done. The Navy sent this veteran a letter 2 weeks before Thanksgiving and said, "We've decided there's not enough evidence to prosecute this chief." Now, it's probably opening a can of worms to say this, but it's the same the same Navy JAG department that bugged the telephone of Chief Gallagher's lawyers. They think they're above the law. And so there's no accountability. If you confess to sexual assault in writing and you don't face any consequences, what's going to stop you?
And what's going to stop the next person from thinking they can do it as well?
That's
And
right.
I agree. And I want to also say that this does not negate all the amazing, wonderful people who are on the front lines, who are doing the right thing and that are trying to make things better. What this is doing is shining a light on the work that still needs to be done. And it's harder for people like myself who are active duty to be the advocate that you are now. And we need you. We need the veterans to be those people who can speak up and speak out and use their voice. And even though those of us who are active duty, we still have freedom of speech, we still have a voice, and we can still respectfully advocate for change. And when we see something that's wrong, we have to rise up and we have to say something. And we've got a bunch of other comments here. I wanted to make sure that I got this. Krishna, she had two comments, but she says, "Thank you for fighting for us." So I thought you'd want to see that. And then, yep, I think I read that one already. Daniel Harriger says you're proud. You're a rock. So proud of you, girl. And then you owe Diane Porter $10 for cussing. And did I lose you, Sandy? I think you're frozen. Well, I'll just continue to read these. Hopefully she'll come back. April Carrington says, Sandy, you truly inspire me to speak up about my military sexual assault, even though I'm not mentally ready yet. And let me see, guys. Looks like we might have lost Sandy. So what I'm going to do is get off the broadcast and I'm going to try to come back on because we definitely are not done talking about this. So if you guys just want to stay tuned real quick, I'm going to try to come right back. Thanks, guys. All right, guys. Sorry about that. It just has a little bit of technical difficulties. But there's a couple other comments I wanted to go through, and some of them. Let me go. Let me see if I can make sure I get them all. Sheila Wyatt said, "Yeah, same response I got for my assaults in the Marine Corps." So there's other people that are going through this. Diane Porter says, "Commands do not want to even press charges; they just get rid of the service member and pass it to the next command."
That's very common.
So people are seeing this stuff, and we wouldn't be having all the congressional hearings that we're having and the conversations that we're having about this issue if it wasn't a problem. And I think, I'm not trying to totally put a positive spin on it, but I have faith. I have faith in my military, and I have faith that there are good people who are really trying very hard to fix these problems and make things better. A good example is the gentleman who runs Protect Our Defenders. I can't remember his name, Don Christensen, I think. And he's done a lot. And he saw all this stuff as a lawyer for the Air Force. And then he got out and decided to be an advocate for it. So I definitely want to make sure that we address the fact that there really are a lot of good people who are trying their best to work in a system that, as we're showing here, even in the civilian world, they're having their own reckoning with it the same way that the military is having theirs. So what we really need, what do you think is it that we can do in or out of the military to help fix this problem?
See something, say something, speak up. If someone is being sexually harassed in front of you, step between them and tell the person to stop. And as a society, we need to stop condoning this behavior. And you condone this behavior by not making predators face consequences. Now, I'm going to say something that's probably going to rile people up, but it's how I feel, and it shows here's the deal. 9 out of 10 women come out of military service with PTSD, most often related to military sexual trauma. Men, there's way more men in the military coming out with sexual trauma than ever before. And it's not about sex. It's not about being gay. It's about power. And here's the deal. In the military, it is a capital crime to commit rape, which means that you can actually be executed. And people say, oh, well, rape's not the same as murder. You're right. Because when you're murdered, you're dead. And you don't have to live with the violation that your body went through. But when you're a rape victim, you are a walking corpse. It takes a long time to trust or be willing to have intimacy, or hell, even telling anybody. If you really, really want to stop, if someone commits rape, they need to be executed. And if you commit sexual assault in the military, you need to be thrown out with a dishonorable discharge, and you need to be, you cannot get your pension. We're letting rapists get out of the military and get away with their crimes by giving them their pensions and allowing them to retire. That doesn't stop anything. All that says
No.
is, well, shit, if you get caught, you're just going to retire early.
Right.
And
And
it's
no, I
it's
agree with you. And I was just going to say,
it's not.
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think that it's one of those things where it's just going to take a lot more transparency in the process for people to speak up and speak out. I've often wondered why case law is not open to the public, and it's not just in the military world either. Even in the civilian sector, why is it that we can't just isn't publicly accessible and easy to read court cases and court transcripts? I mean, the legal process is not clear, and so it falls on us to hire lawyers and pay lots of money for very simple questions to get answered, and that needs to change. It shouldn't just be the lawyers who are fighting these cases. It should be Sandy being able to go to the courthouse, grab her records, or look at past military case law and see how these cases have been adjudicated. Because if we all
Right.
knew how cases were being adjudicated, we would understand a lot more about what you're saying. But unfortunately, it's not a transparent process. And so I think that that's one of the first steps that could help things.
I totally agree with that. And the Vanessa Geegan Act that takes the investigation out of the hands of the chain of command is an instrumental first step. Um, for one thing, is when someone is the subject of a command investigation, when that command investigation is over, the paperwork is filed. It's thrown away. It doesn't follow that person to their next command. So in the case of this active duty Navy chief who is on recruiting duty here in San Diego, he has been a problem child for at least a decade. He got a DUI in 2012 and used a false name on the paperwork. And when we provided that paperwork to the Navy, they're like, whatever. That's not okay. Um, it when you have your mentor or your friend investigating you for a sex crime, that's it doesn't benefit anyone. Because for one thing, the chain of command is not trained as a sex crime investigator. In order to investigate sex crimes in the civilian world, you have to have additional training.
Yeah, that's a
And these
great point.
people go through no training. So the first step is definitely to take it out of the hands of chain of command, but I wholeheartedly believe that it should be taken out of the hands of the military altogether. In San Diego, I don't trust NCIS, and I don't trust the San Diego Navy JAGs. They don't have the interest of the victim at heart. They are dealing with something they don't understand, and they don't know that, and I hate to use this word, but they don't even realize their own unconscious biases.
Right.
Um, for hundreds and hundreds of years, women have been told, well, if you get raped, you put yourself in a position to let it happen.
Well, I think that what you're doing is fantastic. I think it's going to bring a lot of awareness to this issue. I definitely want to say for the record that I am not representing the DoD or any of my official capacity as I say these things. This is probably the most controversial podcast I've ever done, but it needs to be said, and I'm not
These are
saying
not
anything.
right.
Oh, go ahead.
These are my opinions. And these are my
Right,
opinions based on the last 5 years living in this system.
right.
And
And you've seen this. You've been up close and personal with dealing with this.
right. And it's not popular and it sounds harsh, but guess what? It's pretty harsh to join the military believing that you're serving your nation and then to be raped by your platoon sergeant or your LPO or your captain or your chief. And who do you go to? We
Yeah.
had we had a case of a active duty army soldier was raped by her a fellow soldier in the motor pool where she worked. And when she reported it to her platoon sergeant, they called the guy so he could get rid of the evidence. That's not okay.
It's not okay.
And
None of this is okay.
they kicked her out of the army and they kept him because she wasn't useful anymore because she was afraid to be in a room full of men. That's that's not how we take care of our service members. It's it shouldn't matter if you're male or female. You should be able to feel safe when you're serving your nation because you're already volunteering to do a very unsafe thing.
Absolutely. And we deserve our troops deserve better, and it is on us, even on me as a leader in the military now to step up, speak up and say something. So this is my way to do that.
Before we move
And
on, I just want to say one more thing to victims and to active duty military. Here's the thing. Knowing all that we know what will happen if you say that you were raped or sexually assaulted in some way. It's very rare that someone's going to lie about it because their lives go under the microscope. When someone tells you that they've been raped, if you're that person's chain of command and they tell you if they've been raped, give them the benefit of the doubt and investigate it as fully as possible.
absolutely. Well, I do want to ask you a couple questions about some of your equine therapy and some of
Yes.
that work as well. That's that way we can at least end on a little bit of a happier note. And I apologize. I don't apologize. I guess I'm not used to doing these very very serious, deep shows, but I knew the story had to be told, and I'm honored that I was the one to tell it and to help you tell the story. I love you so much, Sandy, and I just think the world of you, and you have so much bravery to do what you're doing and to come forward and to share this so rawly. But to switch gears a little bit, tell me a little bit about the equine therapy and that program that you're working.
So, as I said earlier, after the assault, I fell apart. You were there. I
I know.
couldn't leave my house. I was afraid of everyone. I almost died in April of 2018. I was bleeding internally. My body had shut down. Um, and when I was in the emergency room and they were trying to figure out what happened, it the GI specialist came in and said, "It's stress. Your digestive system has shut down. It's called gastric paresis. And what happens is when you spend too much time in a hypervigilant state, your system starts shutting down because you don't need to digest food to run. So when you're in that fight or flight constantly, your
Mm,
your body starts to
yeah.
shut down. And because I was in a constant state of hypervigilance, my body had shut down because I wasn't dealing with the trauma. I was just trying to get through the day. And I was forced to take a leave of absence from work. And I spent the next 3 years in very, very in depth therapy. I did individual therapy. I did group therapy. I did specialized therapy, which was EMDR, and I did equine therapy. So I'd always ridden, and I'd had a horse for a while, and I had to give him up a few years ago, and I'd missed being around horses. And so in Valley Center, there was an advertisement for caretakers to take care of a herd of Polish Arabian horses. And I volunteered. I thought we were going to get to ride, but they're unbroken. Um, and their story is, it just moved me. So these horses were abused by neglect. Ronald Reagan, when he was president, actually helped the owners of this herd import them from Poland. Um, and they were from the same bloodline as, I want to say General Eisenhower, horse from World War II. And so the couple that had the horses, and they got old and ill and ran out of money. And so the horses were feral. They couldn't be touched. They'd never had human contact, and they were starving. So they were rescued 12 years ago. And they, like 6 years ago, they moved here to Valley Center. So it's very close to my home. And so I originally started out just mucking and feeding the 8 horses that are left. And it was the best therapy in the world for me. I had to be up 2 or 3 times a week by 6 a.m. and be out at the barn. And I'm kind of prissy. So spending my day covered in horse shit and hay, it was different, and the horses didn't care, what my GS level was, or, how many degrees I had. They just wanted me to bring the hay. And I didn't talk to anybody, and it was physical labor. And it was amazing. And the director of the program said, you want to do the equine therapy, you could do it. And I was like, no, no, no. Save that for people who really need it. I just want to take care of the horses. Well, he surreptitiously took me through the program, right? And so by the time I was done, I knew those horses inside and out, and they made great strides in helping me heal. And the director one day was like, hey, do you want to help lead some of these equine therapy sessions with our veterans? And I was like, nah, I don't really want to be around people. And he's a retired lawyer, and he's really good at like making you do things without you realizing that like you agreed to do things.
Yeah.
And so the veteran population that we work with, we actually work with active duty and veterans. So we work with veterans from Veterans Village of San Diego. They're homeless. Many of them have drug and alcohol addictions. We work with the Wounded Warrior Project, with people who have PTSD and traumatic brain injury, MST. If you're active duty or a veteran, combat or not, we will take you through this 4-week program. The first week, all you do is get to know the horses and pet them, groom them. The second week, the first week you just pet, and the second week you groom. The third week you learn to put a halter on. The fourth week you lead the horses on a leading rope. And I did not realize how much more I got out of it by introducing the herd to other people on their healing journey, whether it was physical or mental. We have combat vets who watch their mentors get shot right in front of them. We've got people who were kept prisoner and raped for a year, all kinds of things. And I'd always been really quiet about my PTSD. And the first time we had women show up, I said I was an MST survivor. And so did they. And they came up to me and they're like, I've never said that in public. And I said, well, you
Wow.
should. I said, you should, because it's not your dirty little secret.
Right.
And horses are prey animals. And so they are very hypervigilant. They are run, hide, fight. I mean, they are going to run. Like, if they're scared, they're going to take off, right? They're hypervigilant. They're jumpy, just like us. For a long time, I referred to myself as broken, and my therapist beat that out of me. I'm healing. But I felt broken when I first came in contact with the herd, and it's been, oh my God, almost 3 years now.
Wow.
And I actually got injured in July, and I had to take a break. My barn cat brought in a live baby owl, and I fell down the stairs and broke my leg. So I hadn't been able to go to horses in a while, and I miss them. It's how I started my day. They gave me back a routine. I think when you're healing and you don't have a lot of structure in your day, it's very easy to stay depressed and stay in bed. And I couldn't do that with the horses. They had to eat 7 and 3 every day.
Yep. You
And
just have to do something. Yep. It
right,
gives you
you
that
do.
routine.
You have to put yourself in a schedule. I try to wake up every time at the same day. I have farm animals, so that helps. And I I've slowly learned that it's okay to let yourself be human again. I used to go around right after it happened, I would walk around, tell everyone I was gonna shank them. Like, "Don't come close to me, I'm gonna shank you." And because I froze during my assault, and I learned through the horses that freezing is normal. It's when you can't when your brain can't figure out a way to make it believable what's happening, you're gonna freeze. And the horses taught me how to live in the moment again. I stopped spending my whole day beating myself up because I didn't kick the motherfucker in the balls.
That $10 jar again.
I know. I hope there's some drunk people out there. Um,
That's
I,
beautiful.
you know, I did. I spent all of my time beating myself up for what I didn't do in that moment. And the fact is, I had no control in that moment. But I do have control over my healing.
You do.
And the horses, they saved me. I hadn't talked to a human outside my very close circle in 2 freaking years until I started working with the veterans. And, I'd started to let myself laugh and joke, and it was okay. I didn't have to punish myself anymore. Um, it's been hard the last few weeks knowing that my predator is gonna go free in less than 30 days, and he's gonna hurt other people, but I've had to learn that it's not my responsibility to stop him. All I can do is keep moving forward and help others. You're
Yes.
active duty and someone hurt you, call me. You find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, I'll come with you. And I'm mean. And I know a lot of the leadership here in San Diego. I have no problem telling them what I think. I told the secretary of the VA sucks. But because of that conversation, we're now working with the VA and we're helping them create a standard operating procedure to report sexual assault and harassment and to track it.
I love it. You're making such a difference, Sandy, and you're doing exactly what people should do when something happens. You see something, you say something. No matter how hard it is, you have to do that, because there's going to be people who come after you who are going to needlessly suffer if you don't say something and share your story. And there's so much power when you share, because what you do is you lift the shame, you lift the secrecy. And I have found, even when I share posts about certain issues, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's all these other people that have experienced the same issue. And it makes me feel like, oh, I'm not the only one. I'm not so alone in how I feel about this. So I just congratulate you on what you're doing. I'm so proud of you. And Adam, let's get to your question. I'm sorry. He says you're such a
So,
brave lady.
my predator was a sociopath, and I don't think that all domestic violence or sexual assault happens because someone is a narcissist or a psychopath or even a sociopath. I think a lot of it has to do with crimes of opportunity and the fact that if you get away with it once, you have no impetus to stop. And the higher in rank you go, the less accountability you face. And so I really think that the cornerstone of this problem is accountability. And if we don't hold perpetrators of sexual assault and rape and even harassment accountable, it will never, ever stop. And so if you see someone doing something, stop them. Even if it's your superior officer, you say, sir, I would may speak with you privately for a moment, get him away from that situation or her.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
and please, someone comes to you and says that someone committed a sexual crime against them, don't ask them what they were wearing or what they were drinking. Give them the benefit of the doubt of believing them, because nobody wants to be known as a victim of sexual assault. So you're not going to say that you're a victim of sexual assault if you're not. I would much rather we give the benefit of the doubt to someone who lied than to ignore someone who's telling the truth.
And the
It's
majority of people don't lie. The majority
They
of
don't
people
lie
are
about
telling the
this.
truth. Right. There's this tiny percentage of some
Right.
flip on the map, bleep on the map where a lie is told. But in the majority of the cases, there's truth to it. And we have to take that seriously and hold these people accountable, especially when they're found guilty. I think that's
Right.
probably the part that just really gets me. So you have a couple other thank yous and a few other comments that I unfortunately wasn't able to get to, but another person says, thank you for sharing about what you felt in the moment and honoring yourself during your own healing process. It is so hard knowing that your predator will have freedom in the coming weeks. Absolutely. And then a couple people just shared their stories. MCC Kirk, he just says, Sandy, you are beautiful. I respect the heck out of you. So proud of what you've done and continue to do. And then we had somebody else on my LinkedIn. You'll just see it. It's just their case story. And I'm not going to read it or go into it yet, but I'd like you, Sandy, to take a look at it later.
I will.
And we'll respond to all the comments. We're also going to link the Equine Therapy organization. What is the name of that?
Pegasus Rising Project.
Pegasus Rising Project, and then Veteran Sisters. We'll link to that as well. And we'll also put the article. I know I put it on a couple of the platforms about the doctor so that everybody knows what we're talking about. And with that, Sandy, I'm going to go into my full screen and then I'll just meet you backstage here in just a second.
All right.
Hey guys, if you stayed with us this long, I want to thank you so much. I know this was much more of a serious podcast. It's not the typical type that I do that are more upbeat and they talk about service, but this was also about service and it was a serious issue. And I thank you all for having the humility and having the ear to listen to this very important conversation. And if you guys need help in this issue, I will direct you to the resources that I know of. As like I said, I've been touched by people in my life who have experienced this, and I felt it was something that we needed to talk about. So with that, I want to thank you all for watching. You enjoy the rest of your evening and have a great night. Bye now.